Greetings, Terrarians, Chaos here. Today you can tell that the world looks maybe just a little bit different, or maybe just a lot a bit different. So I'm going to be taking a look at the Terraria 3D mod. It's a mod that I've heard about quite some time ago and wanted to put on the channel, but never really got into it and never really took a look into it until today. I thought it would be a good time to actually see what this mod is all about. So what this mod does is it takes Terraria as it is, including modded items as you can see over here, and it makes them, well, 3D. It adds a series of layers to it to give it more depth, and it puts background items in the background, foreground items in the foreground. You could do things like rotate the camera, you can pan the camera to the side or zoom it in or move it up and down. You could even do funky things like flip to the other side and see what's behind the build, although it's going to be mostly shadows and whatnot. And interestingly enough, you end up behind, or I guess you're in front of the walls. It's really intriguing the way that this mod works, and it's nothing that I've seen before. So what we're going to be doing today is going through a few of my older builds, including this one that I did for Chippy, and just taking a look at what they look like in 3D. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to take everything that I've learned about the 3D mod, and I'm going to try and build a modern house with the mod in mind. So the first thing that comes to mind when I take a look at this build is right over here. The items look quite a bit different. In my build style, I tend to use some lightly painted walls to make them blend in with the blocks in front of them. And as you can see, if I place myself right in front of this pillar, you kind of get that effect. But as you could tell, with this mod, we can easily see what's a background wall and what's a block. The blocks stick out quite a bit more than the walls do. And then these furniture pieces are somewhere in between. And it kind of ruins the illusion that I go for, but it's also really interesting at the same time. So if I were to actually do a build using this mod, which I'll be doing later in the video, I can't use background walls as a substitute as a foreground item. It's just not gonna work. So I'm gonna have to think about how I do my builds a little bit differently, which is really intriguing. Over here we have a bunch of platforms, and this is interesting. They come out very far, all of the way. They're counted the same as a full tile, and so what that's going to do for us is actually make things a little funky when we walk into them. You can see that my character is actually being eaten alive by these platforms right now, which is pretty interesting. And the same thing goes for these just tiny platforms that I have where I'm hanging like a lantern off of. It takes up the entire space, which makes it look a little odd. But like I said, I didn't build this with the 3D mod in mind, so it's really interesting to see how everything has changed. I love the way that these shelves look with all of the decorations on them. The only thing that I wish would be different about this mod is that maybe platforms, and as you can see here, like tables and cabinets and stuff, would perhaps be in between the length of a background item like these bookshelves and things on the wall over here and the full length of a block, probably just behind where the character is, so it can look like your character is standing on the platform or table, because you can obviously stand on them without having to be stuck within them whenever you're in front like this. So a little distance in between whatever's in the background and whatever's in the foreground would be fantastic, I think. So let's take a look up here and see what's different up top. So most of this stuff is actually background walls where backgrounds are needed and foreground blocks where foregrounds are needed. So this build actually looks pretty good in my opinion. This turned out a little bit different. I just needed to lay a row of blocks here to hang the signs from, because you can't hang them on platforms, but also it would look like this if I used platforms. And what's interesting is now it looks like this has a little shelter for if it's raining, which is pretty, I don't know, I like it. I like the change that made in particular. So as for the castle itself, I'm just going to take a quick look before we move on to the next build. And this is going to be something a bit different. So right here, we have this rope that's made out of some living rich mahogany painted brown and then actuated. And as you can see here, the tile is still a full length, even though in 2D Terraria, it will have been pushed into the background. So if I walk into this, we get another weird effect where we're kind of inside of the actuated block. So it's like the block is in the background, but also in the foreground with this mod. So when I do my build, another thing that I can't do, aside from the using walls as an illusion, is I can't really use actuated blocks because they just don't make sense with this mod. You end up just being able to clip through them and it just looks a little funky. Another thing that looks funky, the illusion of spiral stairs. It just does not work with this mod because the stairs all have the same depth, obviously. So that's another thing that I'm going to have to avoid later on when I do the build. And here's something I just noticed that's kind of interesting. Since these are furniture pieces, these windows, they're actually coming out, poking out a little bit, which is intriguing. And these chairs on the flip side are completely flat, so instead of actually having something to sit on, obviously they don't have a surface to sit on. Something that I absolutely love though is the carpet tile from Chad's Furniture. This just translates perfectly within the mod. I mean, look, instead of just having a thin layer across this dynasty wood, the carpet traverses all of the way into the background, which just looks phenomenal. That's one of the things that I'm definitely going to have to incorporate within the build because it just looks great. I also like the way these statues look, although the fact that they're all the way in the background looks a little odd being on top of the structure like this. And the same thing goes for these little spires and the gargoyle statues at the ends. I would imagine these being all the way up to the front. And I know that sounds hypocritical because I want to have these semi-solid platforms, I guess, be partway in the background. And how can I say I want these fully non-solid blocks to be in the foreground? It's just, all I'm saying is that my build style would have to change if I were using the 3D mod. Because this spire at the very top of the spike here, it just does not work with the 3D mod. And also using these background walls for the roof looks a little odd as well. So here's something that looks even more off. As you can see here, the table and basically everything in the kitchen except for the cauldron comes out all of the way to the front because these are all surfaces that you could stand on or place objects on. So they don't exactly work with this mod. This is a kind of decoration that just, for me, doesn't work. I might want to place some of them when I do the build later, but it's not gonna look good if you walk in front of them. It just looks really off. That said, however, and just ignoring the platform, I love the depth that it gives to all of these kegs from Chad's Furniture. It just really changes the way that this cellar looks, and I don't know, it just pulls it all together. And up here, I also like the way that these look, although the pillars support up here is more forward than the pillars, which is a little odd. But down here, where I used, using the Rod of Discord is really weird with the 3D mod, by the way. It's hard to tell where to click. But here, I had used glass blocks with some white painted walls to hide all of these actuated tiles to increase the room size of this tiny house so that it would become a valid NPC house. And as you can see here, you kind of get that effect if you look straight on, but if you look at any other angle, you could definitely see the checkered pattern going all of the way down, which just changes the way that these rooms work. They no longer look like teeny tiny rooms. They actually look like there's something down there that kind of ruins the illusion. So micro builds is another thing that I might try to avoid. Next up, I want to take a look at my most popular build, or at least the most popular video on my channel. So we're going to take a look at the boss themed houses with the 3D mod. So here we are at the Slime King's house, which actually doesn't look too bad in 3D, other than, you know, the platforms and table and stuff. But I'm really liking the way that this looks, particularly the slime on top. I think with the added depth adds an interesting layer to the entire build. I just quickly wanted to answer one of the most commonly asked questions that I get regarding this build. Why did I not put a crown on the King Slime? Well, originally I tried to build it with the crown and I wasn't happy with it, but also the original King Slime did not have a crown at all. So this is kind of a callback to that King Slime. Just saying, that's why I decided on it. The skull rock here is rather interesting. I'm not sure how I like the fact that everything is just straight here. If I were to actually build this in 3D, I would obviously want to round the edges a little bit more, but it does look really intriguing. And going into the mouth particularly feels like an interesting part of this mod. So I do like the way that this mod looks, and okay, this might be my favorite thing within the mod. This build just, I don't know, it just works with this mod, in my opinion. I just really like the way that the Eater of Worlds pops out using the 3D mod. So this one's a little different. I love the way that the eyes look because they look really sunken, and with that black wall in the background, it really pulls it off. But the mouth is a little odd because I'd expect the teeth to be in the front. So if I were to rebuild this, I'd have to think of a way to do it without using the background walls. The support cross beams for the entire structure though, these are just really funky to me. It does not look right at all. So I'm not sure what I would do about that because you can't exactly pull this off using fences and walls. I might just have to leave them out entirely if I wanted to do any sort of cross support on a structure. And the weird thing about these lampposts is normally they would just have a stick sticking out to the side holding the lantern, but obviously it's a full block and it just looks a little odd. This is another build that I think translates pretty well into the 3D mod, particularly these bits underground. I don't know, I love the way that these underground segments look. And the build overall, the depth feels right. Maybe not these fence pieces here in the background, but everything else I'm really enjoying about this. And then we have the library. Now this is just more of the same issue that I had before, but it's really exaggerated here. You almost have nowhere to stand within this library build for the cultist at all. There's pretty much nowhere to stand in here while still having your character seen. If we go underground to the actual cult segment, this background stairwell is completely ruined. So obviously the stairs don't taper off into the background, which is why they're painted the way that they are. But the paint just doesn't hold up the illusion. If you were to look head on like this, it does look like they taper into the background, but as soon as you pan the camera, it doesn't. And it just looks like you have a white, gray, black, and really dark black stair that also take up, I guess, the entire space that your character operates in. I don't know, it doesn't work. So background things probably not an option with this mod as well. The cultists and NPCs in general, and I don't know if you could tell, but my character is also 3D. I really like the way that these characters look. It adds an interesting layer to it. So up next, I'm going to start working on the house. I have a bunch of different blocks and furniture pieces here, and as you could probably tell, I decided I want to use Chad's furniture for this as well. It has a bunch of things that I feel will fit the build, like, well, I have kitchen counters and kitchen sink and stove and stuff in here. Given how we just saw that these blocks interact with the player. I'm not sure if I'm wanting to use them. I have them. I'll decide on that in a bit. But I do want to use Chad's furniture. And so let's hop into a new world and get working on that build. Alright, so here we are in a new world. I'm going to just pick a spot to build the house real quick. This probably seems pretty good. It's nice and flat. So I'm going to clear out these trees, and I've decided that I'm not going to be doing a false foundation for this, just because I really don't like the way that it looks with the illusion being ruined with the 3D mod. There's nothing wrong with the 3D mod. It's not the fault of the 3D mod in any way, shape, or form. It's just that optical illusions with the 3D mod are a lot different to pull off, I suppose. So I have a nice flat area here to build the house. And the first thing I want to do is just lay the floor work. And I might have to do somewhat of a foundation, like just perhaps a stone slab all the way across, because I want to have some dynasty wood for the floor, and if I recall correctly, that's going to blend with the dirt. Yeah, and that's not what I want for this. So I'm going to lay a stone foundation on the base of the house. And what I'm thinking about building here will be a modern style house, so one of the more blocky, square, fancy looking houses. I've built one house similar to this on the channel before, and that was during my 1 block challenge with the slime block. But this is going to be a different style, and I think this will also look a lot better. So first things first, I'm going to start with the floor and possibly just lay out the foundation. So let's get started. The rain looks rather interesting as well because of the 3D effect. So as for the house, I decided to add a foundation. Obviously it's not using the false foundation technique with the walls for reasons I've already stated, but I wanted to have something down here. So I filled it in with some Titan stone block. The floor is going to be primarily made out of some brown painted dynasty wood, though I do plan on adding a carpet to it from Chad's furniture in various places. So I do have some carpet in here somewhere. Oh, here it is. So I'll be adding carpet around the house as I see the need to. The exterior walls for the white segments will be gray stucco with white paint, though I'm thinking I might switch it to yellow stucco with white paint because it just holds a white color a little bit more. And I could show that to you real quick if you want to take a look. So if I grab this, oh, maybe it doesn't in 3D mod. Well, the texture's a little bit different. It's hard to tell. Let me grab the other stuccos and see how they look with this perspective. So green stucco's a little bit more gray, which is not what I want. Red stucco, however, is even more white than the other two. So actually, I think what I'm going to do is go with red stucco rather than gray stucco, because I do like the way that that looks. So up next, what I'm going to be doing is adding the floors to the house and just creating them in a hollow fashion. I'm not going to create any walls yet. And I want the house to be probably a 2-story house. I don't think I'm going to go with a 3-story house for this. For the most part now, I have the layout that I think I want to go with. So I have a balcony here, a small room, which will probably be like a living room over here, maybe the kitchen dining room over here, with a bedroom up here. And I'm thinking, I'm not sure if I want to add a floor up here, just have a really tall room, and then a small room next to the balcony. For the roof and these black segments here, I decided to go with Diamond Gem Spark. Right now they're glowing, they're on, and I actually want to turn them off. So I'm just going to grab the switch, and again, we can't actually see this in the 3D mod. And this is another thing that I want to point out. It's a little odd placing items and blocks. Like, you might think that I can add it down here by clicking here, but I actually have to go quite a bit up before it actually places. So it has a learning curve building and using this mod in general. And I have a feeling that this is going to be weird too. So where's that switch at? Right here. So I'm going to place a block there of wire so that I know where it is. And this also feels a little odd. You can't see where the wire is going whenever you have a block in front of it, which is interesting because, well, I'm not sure why. You could see that it draws over here, but if I go through the block, you can't see it at all. So you kind of just have to trust that you know where you're clicking, which can be a little bit difficult with the perspective. So I'm going to just turn these off, which I think makes this look a lot better. I like the smoothness of the gem spark for this modern style house, which is why I went with it. I suppose I could use a different material, but this is what I decided to use, so that's what we're doing. Up next, I'm going to be working on the background walls and sectioning off the rooms, and I'll get to you before I start laying any furniture down. Alright, so we have all of the background walls done, and I also adjusted some of the walls in certain places as well. In the wooden room here, which I'm thinking will probably be the kitchen and dining room, I have some brown painted boreal wood with some just normal wood wall, and then these gray segments of stone brick here are actually limestone from Chad's Furniture that has been painted gray. I wanted to add a stone accent to the wooden room and to the edges of the other rooms at the entryways as well. These amazing looking glass panels are lead glass from Chad's Furniture. That's actually the main reason why I used the mod. I knew that I wanted to have these square panels as opposed to just one giant clean panel here. I'll show you what that would look like if we just used normal glass. So I didn't want to have panels that looked like this, which is precisely why I decided to do this in Chad's Furniture. I knew that I was going to be playing with the mod anyway, and I knew that these glass panels don't look all that amazing for this style of house. They're not bad, but they're not great. What I could do if I were playing in 2D is actually just use some glass blocks and place them in every other one and then actuate them. But since we're placing them in 3D, you could tell that we end up with these little sticks jutting out of the wall, which doesn't look good, so I can't actually pull off that illusion in here. So I wanted to use Chad's Furniture, grab this lead glass wall, which just looks phenomenal, and use that within the house. In the rest of the house, most of the walls are using white Dynasty wall painted white, but these accent lines are white painted cobweb wall, or cob wall, which also comes from Chad's Furniture. And then this lime accent is actually silly green balloon. I use green balloon as an accent piece most of the time because the other two silly balloon blocks look a little bit more muted or faded, and it doesn't work quite as well. I also went ahead and added some wooden supports to the two raised roof sections just because it adds a little bit more color to the build, and I thought it would be a nice complement. Outside of the small raised roof areas and the balcony, I created some of these supports using this trellis, and I chose boreal wood trellis from Chad's Furniture to add this lattice pattern, which I'll be hanging some ivy from later on. But above that, I placed some Dynasty wood that had been painted brown, and the reason I used a block is because I thought about seeing this as a support beam going across the bottom part of whatever the overhang is, and possibly on the side closest to us, which maybe is cut off and we can't see it, there would be another trellis. And then up here on the balcony, the way that I got this wall to wrap around and actually connect corner to corner with the blocks here is by using a hammered block on top. So what I did here was actually raise up this wall segment on the balcony by 1 using this red stucco painted white, and I actually need to paint that, but you'll see that it's a little bit above the railing that I have for the balcony. But if we hammer these blocks, they connect perfectly, except for this little corner here, which you can't really see unless you adjust the camera to the perfect angle to see it. So that's why I decided to add the railing and have it connect all the way through. What is next will be furniture. The one thing that I'm really unsure about is the kitchen. I really want to add furniture pieces for the kitchen. Like, there's a really nice looking refrigerator that we could add, and some stove, a mini fridge. There's a bunch of furniture that'll look good in this space, but it's all thick like this, and you get lost when you walk in front of it. But I think I'm gonna do it anyway. I don't like this per se for the 3D look, but I'm also going to be showing you what this house looks like in 2D, and for the sake of that, I think I'm going to use those furniture pieces. But before I get onto laying all of the furniture out, I just want to cover the doors. I have 3 different style of doors here, and anywhere that a door will connect with a stucco, I want to use the glass door. And anywhere that the door will connect with an interior segment, like if I put a door here, I'm just going to use a normal wooden door. And then anywhere where the door will connect with wood to the exterior, I'll use some boreal wood door, and I'm going to end up painting that brown. There's one funky thing with the doors and this mod, where if the door is shut and we rotate our camera, the texture is really weird. It's like it stretches out the texture of the handle rather than actually applying the door. And I don't know how this mod works in terms of a technical sense. I don't know if it's possible to actually get that texture on a closed door with the way that the mod works. But if it's possible, that would look much better than this, in my opinion. And so the decoration of the house is complete. Most of the furniture that I used is going to be from Chad's Furniture just because it looks really good here. I've got the potted plants around the house, the birdhouse that spawns a little blue jay that's flying around somewhere right now. For the bedroom, I decided to go with the steampunk chair to match the accent strip that we have in here. And the reason why I like to accent with green is because green is my favorite color. The mirror is also from Chad's Furniture, as are the light pieces and this wardrobe here. It's unfortunate that the wardrobe is blocky, but we're gonna live with it. This fireplace is actually a vanilla item. It's the glass kiln crafting station that I feel makes like a very decent looking modern fireplace. And since there's no chimney above it, we're just gonna say it's a gas fireplace as well. Down here we have the entryway with just a small sitting area. So obviously up here would be more of the family room. And then we have the kitchen, which is honestly completely horrendous in the 3D mod thanks to how these blocky furniture pieces look. But it will look good when I show you the 2D version, I believe. And so the house is complete. These lanterns here are like the normal tall lamps that we get in vanilla, except these ones hang on the wall and there's not the entire stick. There's one other thing that I want to do, and I just want to add some trimmed and square trees to the outside. And so I don't want to have a block blocking my way, much like how these trees are actually in the background. So what I think I'm going to do is use a fence here, and I'll probably do just 2 or maybe 3 of these trees. That might be a little tall, but yeah, let's just do 3 of these. And we're going to try doing this just with living leaf wall. So I might put it off to the sides like this, and we're just going to go for a relatively square shape. That's a little too far off to the side there. And I'm not a huge fan of this connecting bit right there, so we're just going to drop it down right there. And yeah, so we'll just go with these trees. I'm going to raise this one up just so they're not all the same. Sorry, I forgot I still had the guide voodoo doll on. Well, I guess more like sorry not sorry. And then we'll just finish this off with a shorter than the other 2 trees right here. And there we go. So we have a couple of square looking trees that look decent enough. And the build is done. So let's go ahead and take a look at it in 2D. Back in vanilla where everything feels nice and proper once again. So here's the house in 2D, and I'm actually rather pleased with it. It looks completely different from this perspective than it does in 3D. It's quite astonishing. Actually, I feel a little disoriented right now, not having a third dimension and being able to pan my camera around. But I'm really happy with the way that everything's looking in this, and it's very different trying to build a house in 3D, imagining what it will look like in 2D. It doesn't look quite the way that I imagined it, nor does it look quite the way that it did in the 3D mod, and I think that is a good thing. And that's going to do it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed a 3D look at some of my builds in Terraria. I know it's a bit different, but I hope you liked it anyway. If you want to take a look at the mod for yourself, you can search for Terraria 3D within the Team Mod Loader, and if you wanted to download this house, you can find a link in the description below. Please note that if you plan to download this build, you will need to have Chad's Furniture mod installed. No other mods will be required, but since the furniture pieces in here are from Chad's Furniture, they're not going to show up if you don't have the mod. If you liked what you saw today, please consider subscribing to my channel. I would very much appreciate it. And thank you all very much for watching. I'll catch you all later. Happy building.